Everybody, this is our cellular respiration review. We're just going to quickly go through what our cells are doing to make energy. And so we know our energy that our cell has to use is ATP. And we talked a lot about combustion, and we said when we burn fuel, when we burn food, it's just like when we burn wood in a fire. So instead of starting our fire with wood, we're going to start it with sugar. And all fires, as we know, has to have oxygen. And then all fires are going to give off carbon dioxide, water, and heat. So it works the same way in us. So when we are burning food, burning sugar, we have to have a lot of oxygen, and that's going to give us ATP. We're also going to get carbon dioxide and water as a waste product. So think of it like this. When you need a lot of ATP, like when you're running or you're using your muscles, then you're going to breathe harder to take in more oxygen. You're also going to feel hot because of that combustion reaction that's going on inside of you. So we use ATP for all kinds of things. There's y'all's favorite picture of the frogs reproducing. But reproduction, remember, is a characteristic of life, and it's very important for us to just go back and recognize that we have to have energy for that and for active transport and for synthesis, which is building and growth. So this is why many of you are very hungry all the time if you're still in a very active growth phase of your life. So you're needing more food and consequently more energy, which affects your mom's grocery bill, but it's all for a good cause. You can assure her of that. We know we need energy to move, and then of course to help maintain homeostasis. So since we regulate our own temperature, staying warm is a big issue for us, and so especially now that we're finally getting into some of the cooler months of the year. So, of course, again, we get ATP primarily from sugar, but we can get it from fat and we can get it from protein. Those are separate metabolic pathways. So just understand that. But today, what we're going to focus on is how we get ATP from carbohydrates that we are going to be eating and taking in. So remember that a carbohydrate is not just an ice cream cone or a cookie or a piece of cake or pie. It also includes starches, which are potatoes and breads and pastas and things, but it also includes fruits and vegetables. So those are the things that you consider to be very healthy from the grocery store and from the produce section. Those are carbs too. So we've got to get ATP, and so that's adenosine triphosphate. ATP is made of an adenine, which is a nitrogen base, and 3 phosphate groups. Of course, don't forget you also have ribose as your sugar. The energy is in the bond that holds the 3rd phosphate group. So think about how we popped that 3rd balloon in our ATP simulation. We were representing, or we were demonstrating the breaking of that bond between the 2nd and 3rd phosphate. So remember, ATP has more energy than ADP. So here we go with respiration. Notice that the formula is the opposite of what we used in photosynthesis. So this time we start with glucose and oxygen, and then we're going to end up with carbon dioxide, water, and ATP. So everything on this side of the arrow is called a reactant or a substrate. Everything on this side is called a product. This is the mitochondria, which is where we're going to do the aerobic pathways of cellular respiration. So our mitochondria kind of looks like a jelly bean. We have an outer membrane, we have an inner membrane, which you see here, and you kind of see with my cursors this yellow region here. This innermost region of the mitochondria is called the matrix, and that's where the Krebs cycle is going to occur. Okay, so again, our furnace or the location of this reaction is going to be the mitochondria. We're going to use carbs. We have to have oxygen and enzymes. We cannot forget about them to get our ATP. And then our waste product is carbon dioxide. So please remember that carbon dioxide is waste. It's what we produce. We have to have oxygen, but we are going to release carbon dioxide, which of course, as it says, is then used by the plants. So mitochondria are found in plant and animal cells. So plants are going to use photosynthesis. They're going to use this chloroplast to make sugar first. Then the sugar comes over here to the mitochondria. So plants actually need a tiny amount of the oxygen that they produce, just not much. And look, even in this diagram, you see that the animal cell has more mitochondria than the plant cell because animals are going to need more energy. So You can't just sit there and watch a plant grow, but you can sit and watch an animal move. So we're going to have more energy, more oxygen for that. So the majority of the oxygen that the plant makes in photosynthesis, remember, it's going to be released through the leaves in the stomata. But that's the other story. So we're going to get back to respiration. Respiration, cellular respiration, can be carried out either aerobically or anaerobically. Now, large things prefer aerobic respiration. We have to use it because we have to have so much energy. Now, little things like bacteria and yeast, they don't really care. If oxygen's there, they'll use it. If it's not there, then they won't. And they can go either way. So, but we're not like that. Large organisms, even, of course, we're talking about large plants too, they have to use aerobic. So glycolysis is always our first step. It's technically an anaerobic pathway. So it means it doesn't really have to have oxygen, but you always have to do it. So it's stage one no matter what. It takes place in the cytoplasm. We begin harvesting electrons from glucose. So we said glucose is our blueberry bush, remember? And we're going to pick blueberry electrons off of glucose. We're going to store them in NADH. So this molecule right here is holding on to the electrons that we pick off of glucose. And then when we do that, we don't have glucose anymore. After we pick electrons off, we have pyruvate. So then step 2, we go to the mitochondria if we have oxygen. So we can only get into the mitochondria with oxygen. So we're going to start up Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle, and it is aerobic all the way. So you have to have oxygen to do this. We're going to do it in the matrix of the mitochondria, and we're going to keep on picking blueberries. So we're going to continue to pick electrons off of the, not glucose anymore, off of the pyruvate that came into the Krebs cycle. So as we pick those blueberry electrons off of pyruvate, carbon dioxide is produced as waste product. And so that's what we're going to breathe out. And then all of the blueberries that we pick, the blueberry electrons, remember, we're going to store them in NADH and FADH2. So now when we go to the electron transport chain, which this is literally our energy machine in the inner membrane of the mitochondria, we're going to take all of these stored up electrons. Remember, electrons, electricity is energy. So we're going to take all the stored electrons and we're going to use them to make ATPs, and I mean like 34 of them. So we're going to get a whole bunch of electrons out of this chain, but you got to have oxygen. And when you put the oxygen in to the transport chain, what you're going to get out is water waste. So anyway, moving on to next stage, which is what we do with the ATP. Remember, you can't store it. You make it on demand. You make it when you need it. Why? It's too unstable. So it's going to go from ATP. We use it immediately. Remember, make it, break it, make it, break it. Remember me saying that? So ATP, we use it up, we get ADP. And so this has more energy than this. And so look at all the ATPs that we have to have per second. So that's a whole bunch. And then, of course, here we go again. We are going to eat food, then we have to make energy with it. If we don't use all of our ATP, then we're going to store it, and we're going to store it in fat. And so that's why if I were to go on a donut diet, I would get fat because I would store all that extra sugar that I was eating in donuts because, I'm not a runner, so I would not be burning all that extra energy. I would be storing it in fat, and so that's why I do not eat donuts. Here's the anaerobic side. So say I do start running, me not being as old as I am, I'm out of shape. Say my muscle cells run out of oxygen. They're going to switch from aerobic respiration to anaerobic. So that means we're going to do glycolysis, and then we're going to do fermentation. So if I'm talking about my muscles, then my muscles are going to do lactic acid fermentation. If I was talking about yeast, like we did in our lab activity, remember they do alcoholic fermentation. So you begin with glycolysis, and then you do this. But you do not make a lot of ATP. You're only going to make 2 net ATPs, which that is not much at all. So think about what we said on the slide before, how muscle cells need 10 million ATPs per second. Fermentation gets you nothing pretty much, but 2. So just a little teeny tiny amount. So with fermentation, yeast, what they did in our lab, they took all that sugar and they converted it into ATP, carbon dioxide, and alcohol. Carbon dioxide was what blew our balloon up. And so, of course, this is how they make stuff, alcoholic beverages like beer and wine, stuff like that. And then it's how we also make bread. Our cells are going to do lactic acid fermentation, and it's going to convert all the glucose into lactic acid. Technically, it's converting the pyruvate into lactic acid, and this is how they make yogurt too. So I hope that answers your questions. If you still have questions, watch the video again. There's also many resources on YouTube. Crash Course has a good video. Bozeman Science has a good video. Or you are welcome to send me an email question, and I will be happy to get back to you. So remember, y'all are having your test for Madison Middle students. Your test is going to be Monday, and Rosa Scott students, your test is Tuesday. So continue working on your test prep. Bring me a good test prep that has good complete answers in it. Remember, no one-word answers. That test prep is your study guide. Okay, so I hope y'all do well. Again, let me know if I can help you in any way, and I will see you Monday and Tuesday on test day.